My sister ruined my wedding in 10 seconds. She soaked my dress, smashed my cake, and Mom hugged her. So I did the unthinkable that night. My name is Amanda, 32 years old, and I spent 18 months planning my perfect wedding day. Everything was immaculate, from the hand-calligraphed invitations to my custom lace gown. Then my sister Stephanie destroyed it all in 10 seconds flat. She threw champagne on my dress, smashed her fist into our wedding cake, and screamed that I deserved it for acting superior. The worst part, my mother hugged her and said, "She just needs to let it out." I said nothing then, but that night I did something no one expected. I have always been what people call a high achiever. After graduating with honors from Northwestern, I worked my way up to become a marketing executive at one of Chicago's top advertising firms. I love my job, the creative challenges, the client relationships, the sense of accomplishment when a campaign succeeds. My career has been the one constant source of pride in my life, especially since family relationships have always been complicated. I met Nathan at a charity fundraiser for children's literacy 3 years ago. He was the handsome architect who designed the venue, and we connected immediately over our shared love of Frank Lloyd Wright and deep dish pizza. Nathan is everything I could have hoped for: kind, intelligent, supportive, and ambitious without being cutthroat. After 18 months of dating, he proposed during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. I still remember how the sunset painted the water gold as he knelt on one knee. Then there is my sister Stephanie, 8 years younger than me at 24. Stephanie has been the family favorite since the day she was born. My parents divorced when I was 12 and Stephanie was 4. And perhaps out of guilt, my mother Diana began a pattern of excusing Stephanie's every misbehavior. "She is just sensitive." Mom would say, when Stephanie threw tantrums, "She needs extra attention." She would explain when Stephanie disrupted my high school graduation by fainting dramatically during the valedictorian speech. "She is just finding herself" became the excuse when Stephanie dropped out of 3 different college programs, each time requiring more money to start again. Dad Richard always tried to maintain peace, but he worked long hours as a hospital administrator and often stayed silent to avoid confrontation with Mom. "Just be patient with your sister," he would tell me privately. "She will mature eventually." But that maturity never seemed to arrive. The incidents piled up over the years. When I got my first big promotion, Stephanie showed up at the office celebration and spilled red wine on my new white blazer. It was an accident. Mom insisted. When I bought my first condo, Stephanie commented loudly at the housewarming party that I only afforded it because I was sucking up to corporate overlords. Mom laughed it off as just Stephanie's sense of humor. Despite this history, I foolishly hoped my wedding might be different. Nathan and I decided on a June ceremony at the Lakeside Gardens, a stunning venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. We reserved it 11 months in advance and spent countless hours selecting every detail from the white rose and hydrangea centerpieces to the 4-course dinner menu. The dress shopping experience should have been my first warning. Mom insisted Stephanie come along even though I wanted just my best friend Kelly. At the bridal boutique, Stephanie complained about every dress I tried on. "That makes your arms look huge," she commented on a strapless gown. "That lace pattern is so outdated," she said about the dress I eventually fell in love with. When I emerged in the winning dress, a fitted mermaid style with delicate beading and a cathedral train, and everyone gasped, Stephanie muttered. I could never get away with something so attention-seeking. Nathan's family noticed Stephanie's behavior immediately upon meeting her at our engagement dinner. His mother, Patricia, pulled me aside afterward. "Is your sister always so intense?" she asked carefully. I made excuses saying Stephanie was going through a difficult time with school. Nathan's father, James, was less diplomatic. "That girl has issues," he told Nathan. "Make sure she does not ruin the wedding." If only we had listened. As the wedding approached, Stephanie's antics escalated. She skipped her bridesmaid dress fitting, forcing a rush alteration the week before the wedding. She forgot about the bridal shower until Mom called her the morning of the event. At the rehearsal dinner, she gave a rambling toast that was more about her struggles than our relationship. Through it all, Mom made excuses. "Stephanie is just feeling overshadowed," she told me the night before the wedding as we checked into our hotel rooms. Try to include her more tomorrow. This is hard for her seeing you get all the attention. I swallowed my frustration and nodded, not wanting to create drama before my big day. Nathan squeezed my hand supportively as we parted ways for our last night as single individuals. Tomorrow will be perfect, he promised. Nothing can ruin our day. If only he had been right. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and beautiful sunlight streaming through the curtains of my luxury hotel suite. My 3 bridesmaids, Kelly, my college roommate, Jasmine, and my cousin, Tara, arrived at 7:30 a.m. with coffee and bagels, exactly as planned. The hairstylist and makeup artist arrived at 8, setting up their supplies efficiently. Everything was running according to the detailed schedule I had created weeks before, except for one thing. Stephanie was nowhere to be found. She is probably just sleeping in, Mom said dismissively when she joined us at 8:15 a.m. She was already dressed in her mother of the bride outfit, a tasteful champagne-colored dress with a matching jacket. You know how she needs her beauty sleep. Kelly exchanged a look with me that said everything without words. Kelly had been my friend since high school and had witnessed Stephanie's antics for over 15 years. I will call her room, Kelly offered, stepping into the hallway with her phone. She returned minutes later, shaking her head. No answer. Should I go knock? I will check on her, Mom said quickly, grabbing her purse. You girls start getting ready. The next hour passed pleasantly as I had my hair styled into an elegant updo with small white flowers woven throughout. My makeup was applied natural but enhanced to look perfect in photographs. Jasmine and Tara had their turns in the styling chair chatting excitedly about the beautiful day ahead. When Mom finally returned with Stephanie at 9:45 a.m., nearly 2 hours after our scheduled start time, my sister looked disheveled and irritated. Her eyes were puffy, her hair uncombed. She wore the hotel bathrobe and carried a large coffee cup that I strongly suspected contained more than coffee. Sorry, she mumbled unconvincingly. Overslept. Mom jumped in immediately. Stephanie was not feeling well this morning. We should let her sit down before getting started. The hairstylist looked concerned, checking her watch. We are running behind schedule. I need to start on her right away if we are going to finish in time. 5 minutes, Mom insisted, guiding Stephanie to the couch. She needs a moment. Kelly caught my eye again and mouthed, "Breathe at me." I nodded, forcing myself to stay calm. It was my wedding day. I would not let anything ruin it. When Stephanie finally sat in the styling chair, she immediately started complaining. I hate updo. They give me headaches. Can I just wear it down? The bridesmaid hairstyle was decided months ago, I reminded her gently. Everyone is wearing the same twisted side bun with the silver hair clip. It will look terrible on me. Stephanie pouted. My face is rounder than theirs. Mom immediately jumped in. Maybe we could make a small exception. Stephanie does have a different face shape. The hairstylist looked at me questioningly. I sighed. Fine. You can have a looser version of the style. But please keep the silver clip. It matches the bridesmaids' dresses. Stephanie rolled her eyes but nodded. Crisis temporarily averted. When it came time to dress, another issue arose. Stephanie held up her dusty blue bridesmaid dress with a look of disgust. This color washes me out completely. And the neckline is so conservative. All the bridesmaids are wearing the same dress. I said, my patience wearing thin. We ordered it in your size and had it altered to fit you. I look like a grandmother in this. Stephanie complained. Can I at least cut the neckline lower? Absolutely not, Kelly interjected before I could respond. We are all wearing the dresses as designed. Period. Mom started to say something, but Kelly silenced her with a look. For once, Mom backed down, and Stephanie reluctantly put on the dress, though she left it unzipped in protest until the last possible moment. As 11:30 a.m. approached 30 minutes before the ceremony, I finally stepped into my wedding dress. As Tara and Jasmine carefully buttoned the 60 tiny pearl buttons up the back, I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror and felt a wave of emotion. Despite the morning's stress, I looked exactly as I had dreamed. The dress hugged my figure perfectly before flaring out at the knees. The delicate beading caught the light with every movement. My grandmother's pearl earrings completed the look. "You look absolutely beautiful," Kelly whispered, her eyes tearing up. Jasmine and Tara nodded in agreement, both looking emotional. Mom stepped forward, finally focusing on me rather than Stephanie. "Your father is going to cry when he sees you," she said softly. For a brief moment, I glimpsed Stephanie's reflection in the mirror. Something dark and unreadable flashed across her face before she quickly rearranged her features into a smile that did not reach her eyes. The church looked magical as we arrived. White roses and baby's breath lined the aisle, and soft instrumental music played as guests found their seats. I waited in the small antechamber with Dad, who did indeed tear up when he first saw me. "I am so proud of you, Amanda," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You have grown into an amazing woman." The ceremony began right on schedule. Kelly, Jasmine, and Tara processed down the aisle, followed by a reluctant-looking Stephanie, who walked too quickly and failed to smile as we had practiced. I took a deep breath as the wedding march began to play and Dad and I stepped into the doorway. The walk down the aisle was everything I had imagined. Nathan waited at the altar looking handsome and emotional in his black tuxedo. When our eyes met, everything else faded away. The months of planning the morning stress with Stephanie, the 100 pairs of eyes watching us. In that moment, there was only Nathan, the man I loved, waiting to begin our life together. The minister welcomed everyone warmly and began the ceremony. As Nathan and I exchanged vows, I was vaguely aware of Stephanie shifting restlessly beside me in the line of bridesmaids. At one point, her phone rang loudly, and she fumbled to silence it, drawing annoyed glances from guests. During a particularly emotional reading about love and commitment, I heard her sigh audibly. But none of that could diminish the joy of the moment when Nathan slid the platinum band onto my finger and the minister pronounced us husband and wife. As we shared our first kiss as a married couple, the church erupted in applause. We turned to face our guests beaming with happiness and began our walk back down the aisle as the triumphant recessional music played. "We did it," Nathan whispered as we exited the church into the bright June sunshine. "Mrs. Amanda Wilson." The name, my new name, sent a thrill through me. For those few precious moments standing on the church steps with rice and rose petals being thrown around us, everything was perfect. I had no idea that the real drama was just beginning. The 20-minute drive from the church to the Lakeside Gardens reception venue gave me a brief respite. Nathan and I traveled in a classic white Rolls-Royce complete with a just married banner and trailing cans that his groomsmen had attached. Sitting beside my new husband, his hand warm in mine, I allowed myself to relax and enjoy the moment. "You are stunning," Nathan said, his eyes never leaving my face. "I cannot believe how lucky I am." "Even with the family drama?" I asked, thinking of Stephanie's behavior at the church. "Hey," he squeezed my hand. "Nothing can ruin today. Not even your sister's attitude." If only that had been true. The reception venue took my breath away as we entered. The staff had executed our vision perfectly. Tables draped in ivory linens with centerpieces of white roses and hydrangeas. Twinkling fairy lights strung across the ceiling. The dance floor polished to a high shine. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the spectacular view of Lake Michigan, the water glittering in the afternoon sun. The wedding coordinator ushered us to our places for the grand entrance. The bridal party had arrived in separate vehicles and were already lined up groomsmen in their black tuxedos and bridesmaids in their dusty blue dresses. Kelly gave me a thumbs up. Stephanie stood slightly apart from the others, checking her phone and looking bored. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced as the music swelled. "I am pleased to present for the first time Mr. and Mrs. Nathan and Amanda Wilson." We stepped into the reception hall to enthusiastic applause. Nathan twirled me around once before leading me to the center of the dance floor for our first dance. As Ed Sheeran's Perfect played, we swayed together and I felt myself tearing up at the perfection of the moment. "I love you," Nathan whispered against my hair. "I love you too," I whispered back. As the song ended, guests joined us on the dance floor. The atmosphere was joyful and celebratory. For a while, I lost myself in conversations with friends and family, accepting congratulations and posing for photos. Everything was going according to plan. Then came time for the speeches. My father went first, champagne glass raised. When Amanda was a little girl, he began, his voice warm with emotion. She used to tell me she wanted to be a superhero when she grew up. And in many ways, she has become one. Not the kind that flies or has special powers, but the kind who works harder than anyone I know, who never gives up, who achieves every goal she sets for herself. I saw Stephanie shift uncomfortably at a nearby table where she sat with Mom. Dad continued his speech, talking about my academic achievements, my career success, and how proud he was of the woman I had become. With each accomplishment, he mentioned, Stephanie's expression darkened. And now, Dad concluded, she has found a partner worthy of her in every way. Nathan, you are getting an extraordinary woman. Take good care of my daughter. Guests applauded as Dad hugged me tightly. Nathan's best man spoke next, sharing humorous stories about their college days and offering sincere congratulations. When the formal speeches concluded, the DJ invited everyone to enjoy the dinner buffet. As guests lined up for food, I noticed Stephanie making repeated trips to the open bar. Mom followed her like a shadow, occasionally trying to hand her plates of food that Stephanie ignored. From across the room, I saw Nathan's parents watching this dynamic with obvious concern. Your sister is getting quite drunk, Kelly murmured as she joined me at the head table. Do you want me to try to intervene? Would it help? I asked wearily. Probably not, Kelly admitted. But I can run interference, keep her away from you and Nathan as much as possible. Thanks, but I do not want to ruin your evening, too. I squeezed her hand gratefully. Just help me keep an eye on her. Maybe she will pass out early and we can avoid any major incidents. But that hope faded as I watched Stephanie grow progressively more intoxicated. She interrupted conversations I was having with guests, making odd comments or trying to redirect attention to herself. When I was speaking with Nathan's grandmother about her recent move to a retirement community, Stephanie barged into our circle. Did Amanda tell you she was the golden child growing up? She slurred, swaying slightly. Nothing I did was ever good enough because perfect Amanda set the bar so high. Nathan's grandmother looked startled. I quickly made excuses and guided Stephanie away. Please stop this, I whispered urgently. This is my wedding day. Exactly. Stephanie hissed. Your day again. Always your day. Before I could respond, Mom appeared and looped her arm through Stephanie's. Come sit down, sweetie. You need some water. As they walked away, I saw Nathan watching from across the room. He made his way to my side. Everything okay? He asked, concern evident in his voice. Just the usual Stephanie drama, I said, trying to sound more casual than I felt. Nothing new. Nathan frowned. Your mother needs to control her. This is getting out of hand. I know, I sighed. But we both know that is not going to happen. We tried to enjoy the rest of the evening despite the growing tension. The father-daughter dance went smoothly, though I spotted Stephanie at the bar during the entire song. When it came time for the mother-son dance, Nathan and his mother Patricia glided gracefully around the floor while Stephanie loudly complained to anyone who would listen about the DJ's music selection. As the evening progressed, I found myself constantly scanning the room, trying to keep track of my sister's location. It was exhausting being on high alert during what should have been the happiest day of my life. Several times I caught Nathan's parents exchanging worried glances, and I felt embarrassed by my family's dysfunction being on full display. Try to enjoy yourself, Kelly urged when she caught me looking anxiously around the room again. This is your wedding. Do not let her steal this from you, too. I nodded, determined to follow Kelly's advice. For the next hour, I deliberately focused on the positive dancing with Nathan, chatting with friends I had not seen in years, soaking in the beautiful atmosphere we had created. The cake cutting was approaching, and I allowed myself to hope that maybe, just maybe, we would make it through the evening without a major incident. I should have known better. The wedding coordinator signaled that it was time for the cake cutting and the DJ made the announcement. Guests gathered around the elegant three-tier white cake decorated with sugar flowers that matched my bouquet. Nathan and I positioned ourselves behind it, smiling for the photographer who was capturing every moment. The cake was truly a work of art. Vanilla bean with raspberry filling covered in smooth white fondant with delicate piping. We had spent hours at the bakery tasting samples until we found the perfect combination. The cake topper, a silver ornament with our initials intertwined, caught the light as Nathan reached for the silver cake knife. I did not immediately notice Stephanie approaching. My attention was on Nathan and the cake on, smiling for the camera on this sweet tradition we were about to share. It was only when I heard Mom say sharply, "Stephanie, wait," that I looked up. My sister was moving unsteadily toward us. A full champagne flute clutched in her hand, her eyes unfocused but determined. There was something in her expression that sent a chill down my spine. A combination of resentment, jealousy, and volatile anger that had been building all day. "Stephanie," I said cautiously, "we are about to cut the cake. Why do not you?" I never finished the sentence. In one swift, shocking motion, Stephanie flung the contents of her champagne glass directly at me. The cold liquid hit my face and chest, immediately soaking into the bodice of my wedding dress. There was a collective gasp from the guests as champagne dripped down my carefully applied makeup and meticulously styled hair. But Stephanie was not finished. Before anyone could react, she lunged forward and slammed her open palm directly into the side of the wedding cake. The bottom tier partially collapsed. The beautiful sugar flowers crumbling the entire structure, tilting precariously on the cake stand. "This is what you get for acting like you are better," Stephanie screamed, her voice echoing in the suddenly silent reception hall. "Always perfect, Amanda. Always the favorite, always the successful one, while I am sick of living in your shadow." The room froze in collective shock. Nathan stepped protectively in front of me. His face flushed with anger. The photographer had stopped taking pictures, his camera hanging limply at his side. Someone dropped a glass, the shattering sound abnormally loud in the stunned silence. And then the most painful part of all, Mom rushed forward, not to me, but to Stephanie. She wrapped her arms around my sister's shaking shoulders and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "She just needs to let it out. She has been holding this in for so long." Not a word about me standing there in my ruined wedding dress. Not a hint of recognition that Stephanie had just destroyed one of the most important moments of my life. Just more excuses, more enabling, more of the same pattern that had defined our family dynamic for as long as I could remember. Dad stood frozen several feet away, his face a mask of embarrassment and indecision. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the desire to stand up for me, warring with his habitual passivity in the face of Mom's enabling. Kelly and the other bridesmaids rushed to my side with napkins, desperately trying to blot the champagne from my dress. Nathan's mother, Patricia, appeared with a damp cloth, gently dabbing at my face, where mascara had begun to run. Nathan himself was speaking in low, angry tones to Stephanie, who was now sobbing dramatically in Mom's arms. "How could you?" I heard him say, "This is our wedding day. What is wrong with you? Do not yell at her." Mom snapped. "Cannot you see she is upset?" Nathan's father, James, stepped in, his normally jovial face stern. "I think it might be best if you took your daughter home," he said to Mom, his voice leaving no room for argument. "She has caused quite enough damage for one evening." "She did not mean it," Mom protested. "She is just emotional." "Amanda knows she did not mean it, right, Amanda?" All eyes turned to me. I stood there, champagne dripping from my once perfect dress, surrounded by the ruins of my wedding cake and the shocked faces of our guests. In that moment, I made a decision. I would not scream. I would not cry. I would not give Stephanie the satisfaction of another dramatic scene with her at the center. Instead, I said nothing. I simply looked at my sister and my mother, memorizing every detail of this betrayal. The way Mom cradled Stephanie like she was the victim. The way Stephanie's tears immediately stopped when she realized I was not going to lash out. The calculating look that briefly replaced the fake remorse on her face. "Let us get you cleaned up," Kelly whispered, leading me toward the bridal suite. Nathan followed, his hand protectively on my back. Once we were alone in the suite, the emotions I had been suppressing threatened to overwhelm me. My hand shook as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, makeup streaked hair dampened and falling, the beautiful beadwork on my dress now stained with champagne. "I am so sorry," Nathan said, his voice tight with anger and concern. "I should have anticipated something like this and had someone watching her more closely." "It is not your fault," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. This is who Stephanie is, who she has always been, and who my mother has always allowed her to be. Kelly worked efficiently, using a hairdryer on low heat to dry my dress as much as possible, reapplying my makeup and fixing my hair. Nathan stepped out to check on the guests and to see what could be salvaged of the reception. We can still cut what is left of the cake, Kelly suggested, trying to sound upbeat. The top tier seems mostly intact. I nodded mechanically, but my mind was elsewhere, turning over a realization that had been building for years, but had crystallized in that moment of public humiliation. Nothing would ever change unless I forced it to change. My mother would never hold Stephanie accountable. My father would never stand up to either of them. This toxic pattern would continue indefinitely through my future pregnancies, my children's birthdays, every milestone in my life, unless I did something drastic to break the cycle. And in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. Nathan returned reporting that his parents and the wedding coordinator had managed to restore some order to the reception. The damaged cake had been taken away and the bakery's emergency number had been called to see if a replacement dessert could be delivered. Guests were back on the dance floor, though the mood had obviously shifted. "We can leave if you want to," Nathan offered. "No one would blame us." I shook my head. "No. I will not let her ruin the entire night." I straightened my shoulders, looking at my reflection with determination. "We are going back out there. We are going to dance and celebrate with the people who actually care about us. And tomorrow I am going to make some changes." Nathan looked at me questioningly, but I did not elaborate. I took his hand and we returned to the reception. Mom and Stephanie were gone, presumably having been convinced to leave by Nathan's parents or my father. Dad approached us immediately, his face haggard with shame. "Amanda, I am so sorry," he began. "I should have." "Not now, Dad." I cut him off. "We can talk tomorrow. Tonight, I just want to finish my wedding without any more drama." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. For the remainder of the evening, I put on a brave face, dancing with Nathan and our friends, thanking guests for coming, pretending that my sister had not just publicly humiliated me on what should have been the happiest day of my life. But inside, beneath the smile and gracious bright exterior, I was formulating a plan. The reception ended around 11:30 p.m. earlier than planned, but understandable. Given the circumstances, Nathan and I thanked the remaining guests, hugged our closest friends, and finally made our way to the honeymoon suite at the Lakeside Hotel. Once the door closed behind us, the facade I had maintained throughout the evening crumbled. I sank onto the edge of the king-sized bed, still in my stained wedding dress, and finally allowed the tears to come. Nathan sat beside me, holding me close as I sobbed against his shoulder. "I just do not understand," I cried, my voice breaking. "Why does she hate me so much? Why does Mom always take her side? What did I ever do except try to live my life?" Nathan stroked my hair, his touch gentle, but his voice firm. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Stephanie has serious issues and your mother enables her instead of getting her the help she needs. This is not about you, Amanda. It has never been about you." I pulled back, wiping my eyes and smudging my carefully reapplied makeup, "but it affects me. It has always affected me. Every accomplishment, every happy moment somehow becomes about Stephanie's feelings, Stephanie's jealousy, Stephanie's needs." Nathan helped me out of my wedding dress carefully, hanging it up despite the stains that would likely never come out. I changed into the silk pajamas I had packed for our wedding night. The romantic negligee I had planned to wear now seeming ridiculous given my emotional state. We sat together on the balcony overlooking the moonlit lake the summer night, warm and fragrant with nearby gardens. It should have been romantic. Instead, we were having the conversation I had avoided for too long. "There is something I never told you," I said after a long silence, about Stephanie and my financial situation. Nathan looked at me curiously. "What do you mean?" "When Stephanie started college for the third time, after dropping out of 2 programs already, my parents were in a difficult position. Dad had just been through that expensive surgery for his back and their savings were depleted. Mom was determined that Stephanie should have another chance, but they could not afford the tuition deposit. So, you paid it?" Nathan guessed, understanding dawning on his face. I nodded. $30,000 for the first year, with the understanding that it was a loan that she would maintain good grades, that she would eventually pay me back. Let me guess, none of that happened. She barely passed her classes, spent most of her time partying, and when the second year came around, Mom called me crying about how Stephanie would lose her spot in the program if the next tuition payment was not made. And you paid again, Nathan said, not a question, but a statement. Another $30,000. And then when Stephanie complained about her roommate situation, I co-signed the lease on her apartment, a luxury building downtown that she insisted was the only safe option near campus. $2,000 a month, most of which I end up covering when she is short on rent. Nathan stared at me, stunned. Amanda, that is why did you never tell me this? I looked away ashamed because I knew how it would sound, like I am being manipulated. Like I am a fool. And maybe I am. But she is my sister, and I kept hoping that if I helped her get established, get educated, she would finally grow up and we could have a real relationship. After what happened tonight, do you still believe that is possible? The question hung in the air between us. I thought about the cake, the champagne, the vicious words Stephanie had hurled at me. I thought about Mom embracing her, comforting her while I stood there dripping and humiliated. No, I said finally, my voice hardening. I do not. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. What are you doing? Nathan asked as I started typing rapidly. What I should have done years ago, setting boundaries with consequences. First, I logged into my online banking app and canceled the automatic payment scheduled for next week, Stephanie's tuition deposit for the upcoming fall semester. Next, I sent an email to her landlord explaining that I would no longer be serving as guarantor on the lease after the current term ended in 30 days. I copied Stephanie on the email. Are you sure about this? Nathan asked as he watched me work methodically. This is a big step. I have never been more sure of anything, I replied. My fingers never pausing. She ruined our wedding day. Nathan deliberately, maliciously, and Mom defended her. I am done enabling both of them. I called my bank's 24-hour customer service line, and despite the late hour, I was able to speak with a representative. I removed Stephanie's access to the emergency credit card I had provided her years ago. I transferred the remaining balance from our shared family account, originally set up by our parents, but now primarily funded by me, into my personal account. Should we be doing this tonight? Nathan asked cautiously. It is our wedding night after all. I paused, looking at him with determination. I need to do this now while I still have the courage, because tomorrow Mom will call crying. Stephanie will apologize and claim she was just drunk and emotional. Dad will beg me to keep the peace. If I wait, I might weaken. Nathan nodded slowly. I understand. And I support whatever you decide. I just want you to be sure. I am sure, I said firmly. For too long, I have enabled Stephanie just like Mom has. Bailing her out, paying her way, excusing her behavior. It ends tonight. I documented everything I was doing. Screenshots of canceled payments, copies of emails, recordings of my calls with the bank and the landlord. I knew I would need this evidence when the inevitable backlash came. By 1 a.m., I had dismantled every financial connection between myself and my sister. The tuition deposit gone, the lease guarantee terminated, the emergency credit card canceled, the shared account emptied. How do you feel? Nathan asked. As I finally set my phone aside, I took a deep breath, surprised by the lightness spreading through me. Liberated, I admitted, and a little terrified about what happens next. Nathan pulled me close. Whatever happens, we will face it together. That is what marriage means. I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I am sorry. This is how our wedding night turned out. Hey, he tilted my chin up so I met his eyes. I married you for better or worse. Remember, this might be a worse moment, but we will have plenty of better ahead of us. We fell asleep, holding each other the moonlight, casting soft shadows across the bed. My last thought before drifting off was that Stephanie and Mom had no idea what was coming. For once, I would not be the one scrambling to fix their mess. For once, they would face the consequences of their actions. And it would start at exactly 7:30 a.m. tomorrow. The alarm chimed softly at 7 a.m. I had set it deliberately, wanting to be fully awake and prepared for what I knew was coming. Nathan stirred beside me, his arm tightening around my waist as he gradually returned to consciousness. "Morning, wife," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. Despite everything, I smiled. "Morning, husband." We ordered room service breakfast waffles with fresh berries, crispy bacon, and strong coffee. As we ate on the balcony, watching the early morning sunlight dancing across the lake, I felt a strange calm. The hurt and anger from the previous day remained, but they had crystallized into something harder, more resolute. At precisely 7:20 a.m., my phone lit up with a bank notification. The automatic tuition payment, the one I had canceled the night before, had failed to process. Stephanie would be receiving the same alert. "Here we go," I said to Nathan, showing him the screen. 7:30 a.m. came, and with it, the first call from Stephanie. I watched my phone vibrate against the table, but made no move to answer it. 3 more calls followed in quick succession, then a flurry of increasingly panicked text messages. "Amanda, something is wrong with the tuition payment. The university says the payment was rejected. I am going to lose my place in the program. Call me back." At 7:45 a.m., Mom started calling. I silenced those calls, too. Nathan watched me with a mixture of concern and admiration. "Are you okay?" he asked as my phone continued to light up with notifications. "Better than okay," I replied. For the first time in years, I am not dropping everything to solve their problems. By 8 a.m., my voicemail box was full. The text messages had escalated to include my father as well. "Your mother is very upset. Stephanie is crying. Whatever problem you are having with your sister, this is not the way to handle it." I drafted a single response and sent it to all 3 of them. "I will see you at the post-wedding brunch at 10 a.m. We can discuss everything then." Then I silenced my phone completely and focused on getting ready. I chose my outfit carefully, a white sundress that symbolized my status as a newlywed, but also projected strength and confidence. I styled my hair in loose waves and applied my makeup with precision. Nathan, dressed in khakis and a light blue button-down shirt that matched his eyes. "Ready?" he asked as I slipped on my sandals. "As I will ever be," I replied. The restaurant was only a 10-minute walk from our hotel. We arrived at 9:55 a.m. deliberately early to ensure we could choose our seating strategically. Several of our friends were already there, including Kelly and her husband and Nathan's parents. I greeted everyone with genuine warmth, accepting congratulations and deliberately avoiding any mention of the previous night's disaster. At 10:05, Mom, Dad, and Stephanie arrived. The transformation in Stephanie was striking. Gone was the belligerent, drunk sister who had ruined my wedding cake. Today she looked pale and frightened, her eyes darting around nervously. Mom's face was tight with barely controlled anger. Dad just looked exhausted. They spotted us and approached our table. I noticed several guests watching curiously, including Nathan's parents, who had witnessed Stephanie's behavior the night before. "We need to talk," Mom hissed as soon as they were within earshot privately. "Whatever you need to say can be said right here," I replied calmly. "I have no secrets from my husband or our friends." Stephanie pushed forward. "What did you do?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "The university called. They said my enrollment is in jeopardy because the tuition payment was rejected. I canceled it," I stated simply. There was a moment of stunned silence. Mom recovered first. "You what?" she gasped. "How could you? You know how important this program is to Stephanie, is it?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Because from what I have seen, she spends more time partying than studying. This is her 3rd attempt at college, and I have funded all of them." "No more." "But you promised," Stephanie cried, tears welling in her eyes. "You said you would help me." "That was before you threw champagne on my wedding dress, destroyed my cake, and screamed insults at me in front of everyone I care about," I replied. "Actions have consequences, Stephanie. Welcome to adulthood." Mom's face flushed with anger. This is spiteful and petty, Amanda. So your sister had too much to drink and made a scene. That is no reason to derail her entire future. I noticed several brunch guests openly watching now, including my father-in-law, James, who made no attempt to hide his approval of my stance. It was not just a scene, Mom, I said. It was the culmination of a lifetime of Stephanie's jealousy and your enabling. And speaking of consequences, I should mention that I have also removed my name as guarantor from Stephanie's lease effective in 30 days. Stephanie's face went from red to white in an instant. You cannot do that. I will be evicted. That apartment is $2,000 a month. I cannot afford that on my own. Then perhaps you should find a more affordable place to live or get a job to supplement your part-time barista position or ask Mom and Dad to co-sign instead. Dad finally spoke up. Amanda, I understand you are upset, but this seems extreme. Surely we can work something out. I turned to him feeling a twinge of sympathy for his obvious discomfort. We can, Dad, but not the same arrangement as before. I am done being Stephanie's personal bank and safety net while she treats me with contempt. So, what do you want? Mom demanded. An apology. Fine. Stephanie apologized to your sister. Stephanie muttered something that vaguely resembled. Sorry. While staring at the floor. That is not good enough, Nathan interjected, speaking for the first time. Not even close. I placed my hand over his and addressed my family. I do not just want words. I want change. Real lasting change in how we function as a family. What does that mean? Dad asked. It means Stephanie needs professional help, therapy at minimum, to address her jealousy and resentment issues. It means Mom needs to stop enabling her destructive behavior. It means all of us acknowledging the unhealthy dynamics that have defined our family for years. Mom scoffed. This is ridiculous. Stephanie does not need therapy. She just needs support and understanding. That right there, I said, pointing at Mom, is exactly the problem. You refuse to acknowledge that Stephanie's behavior is abnormal and harmful. Until that changes, nothing else will. So you are just cutting her off completely? Dad asked, looking pained. Your own sister? Not completely, I clarified. But my support will now have conditions. If Stephanie wants my financial help, she needs to show she is serious about changing. That means regular therapy, maintaining passing grades, getting a proper job, and most importantly, treating me with basic respect. Stephanie's tears had stopped, replaced by a calculating look I recognized all too well. And if I do all that, you will pay my tuition again. I will consider it, I said carefully. But it would be a loan with a written agreement, not a gift, and one incident like last night would end my support permanently. Mom looked like she wanted to argue further, but Dad placed a restraining hand on her arm. For the first time in my memory, he seemed to be taking a firm position. I think Amanda's terms are reasonable, he said quietly. Stephanie, your behavior has been getting worse, not better. Maybe it is time we tried a different approach. Mom turned to him in shocked betrayal. Richard, how can you say that? She is threatening to make our daughter homeless. No. Dad corrected her. She is asking our adult daughter to take responsibility for herself. There is a difference. I felt a rush of gratitude toward my father. Perhaps he had more backbone than I had given him credit for. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the waiter taking drink orders. The momentary pause gave everyone a chance to collect themselves. When the waiter left, the tone had shifted subtly. What exactly do you want from us right now? Mom asked, her voice tightly controlled. I want you to sit down and have brunch with us like civilized people, I said. I want you to congratulate me and Nathan on our marriage. I want you to apologize to our guests for the disruption last night. And then when we all go home, I want you to really think about whether the current family dynamic is working for any of us. To my surprise, they complied. The brunch proceeded with strained politeness. Stephanie remained subdued, picking at her food and checking her phone frequently, likely looking for alternative funding sources. I guessed Mom made stilted conversation with Nathan's mother, who responded with cool civility. Dad seemed relieved that open hostilities had ceased. As the event wound down, Nathan's father approached me while Nathan was saying goodbye to some friends. "I saw what you did there," James said quietly. "Standing your ground." "It was impressive." "Thank you," I replied. "It was not easy." "Family rarely is," he acknowledged, "but sometimes tough love is the only kind that works." He squeezed my shoulder supportively. "Welcome to the family, Amanda. We are glad to have you." As Nathan and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, a 2-week trip to Italy that would begin the following day, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness that my wedding had been marred by family drama, anxiety about the long-term consequences of my actions, but predominantly a sense of liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I had set clear boundaries with my family and stood firm when they were tested. "Are you okay?" Nathan asked as we walked hand in hand back to our hotel. I considered the question carefully before answering. "Not entirely, but I will be." "We will be." He smiled, lifting our joined hands to kiss my knuckles. "Yes," he agreed. "We will." 6 months passed quickly. Nathan and I returned from our Italian honeymoon, tanned happy and more in love than ever. The ancient streets of Rome, the canals of Venice, and the rolling hills of Tuscany had provided the perfect backdrop for the beginning of our marriage. For 2 blissful weeks, I had barely thought about the wedding disaster or the family drama that followed. Reality, of course, waited for us back home in Chicago. During our honeymoon, my phone had filled with messages from Stephanie. First angry and accusatory, then pleading, and finally silent. Mom had called daily for the first week, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart. Dad sent just one text. "Take your time. We will talk when you get back." Upon our return, I maintained my position. Stephanie had found a roommate to share her expensive apartment costs and had taken a full-time job at a local bookstore to supplement her barista income. The university had placed her program enrollment on hold rather than canceling it completely, giving her time to secure alternative funding. Most surprisingly, she had started seeing a therapist. According to Dad, who had begun calling me once a week for brief, careful conversations, the therapist had suggested Stephanie might have undiagnosed issues with anxiety and possibly a personality disorder that contributed to her erratic behavior and intense jealousy. Mom initially refused to speak to me at all after I declined to reinstate Stephanie's tuition payments immediately upon my return. Her silence lasted nearly 2 months before Dad finally convinced her to at least answer my calls. Our conversations were stiff and formal, revolving mostly around neutral topics like the weather and Dad's health. Then 4 months after the wedding, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived at our condo, not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter from Stephanie. I recognized her neat, precise handwriting on the envelope, so different from her chaotic personality. I opened it with Nathan sitting beside me on our living room couch, half expecting another guilt trip or demand. Instead, I found something I had never received from my sister before, a genuine apology. "Dear Amanda," she had written. "I have started this letter 17 times and each attempt feels inadequate. How do you apologize for ruining someone's wedding day, for years of resentment and sabotage, for being the worst sister imaginable? I do not know, but I am trying anyway. My therapist, Dr. Chen, has helped me understand some things about myself that I never wanted to face. I have spent my entire life comparing myself to you and feeling like I could never measure up. That is not your fault. It was never your fault. It was my problem. My insecurity, my failure to find my own path instead of resenting yours. What I did at your wedding was unforgivable. I was drunk, yes, but that is no excuse. The alcohol just removed the filter on feelings I had been harboring for years. I cannot take it back. But I want you to know that I am deeply, profoundly sorry. Not just for the wedding, but for all of it. Every accomplishment I diminished. Every special moment I ruined. Every time I made your life harder instead of being the sister you deserved. I am not asking for your forgiveness or for you to restore financial support. I am working now, actually working hard for the first time in my life and beginning to understand the satisfaction of earning my own way. I just wanted you to know that I am trying to change, truly change, and that I regret the pain I have caused you, your sister Stephanie. I read the letter twice, then handed it silently to Nathan. When he finished reading, he looked at me with raised eyebrows. "What do you think?" he asked. "Does it seem sincere?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes," I said finally. "It does. Stephanie has many faults, but she was never a particularly good actress. This feels real." "So, what now?" "I think I would like to talk to her in person." Neutral territory. A week later, I sat at a corner table in a quiet coffee shop downtown, nervously watching the door. When Stephanie entered, I almost did not recognize her. Gone was the carefully cultivated cool girl aesthetic she had maintained for years. Her previously highlighted hair was now its natural brown, pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore minimal makeup and casual practical clothing, jeans and a simple sweater rather than the trendy expensive outfits she used to favor. She spotted me and approached hesitantly as if expecting to be sent away. "Hi," she said softly. "Thank you for meeting me." "Thank you for the letter," I replied, gesturing for her to sit. We ordered coffee and spent the first few minutes in awkward small talk about the unseasonably cold weather and the new holiday drinks on the menu. Finally, I addressed the elephant in the room. "Your letter mentioned therapy. How is that going?" Stephanie's face brightened slightly. "Good. Really good, actually. Dr. Chen is kind of brutal sometimes. She does not let me get away with excuses or self-pity, but it is helping. She thinks I have had undiagnosed anxiety for years, plus some complicated family dynamics that affected my development." "Complicated family dynamics," I repeated. "That is one way to put it." A flash of the old defensive Stephanie appeared briefly, then subsided. "I know I am not blaming Mom for everything if that is what you were thinking. Dr. Chen is big on personal responsibility. I made my choices. Speaking of Mom, how are things with her?" Stephanie sighed. "Difficult. She does not really understand why I am in therapy. Keeps saying there is nothing wrong with me. I just need more support. Dr. Chen suggested some family sessions, but Mom refused. That sounded exactly like our mother and dad. He comes with me sometimes, actually, to the family sessions. It has been illuminating for both of us." She hesitated, then added, "He cries a lot about how he failed to protect you from me and Mom. About how he stayed silent when he should have spoken up." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I would like to talk to him about that sometime." We sipped our coffee in silence for a moment. Then Stephanie spoke again, her voice small. "I really am sorry, Amanda, for everything, but especially for your wedding. I cannot believe I did that to you. Why did you?" I asked the question that had haunted me for months, finally spoken aloud. "What was going through your mind at that moment?" Stephanie stared into her coffee cup. "Honestly, a lifetime of jealousy all coming to a head. You looked so beautiful, so happy, so perfect. And there was Nathan. This amazing guy who obviously adored you, and everyone was celebrating you again, and I just snapped. It was like this voice in my head saying she cannot have everything. It is not fair, which is ridiculous. Of course, life is not fair and your happiness does not take anything away from me." Her self-awareness surprised me. The old Stephanie would never have acknowledged such ugly thoughts. "I have been doing a lot of thinking too," I admitted, "about my role in our dynamic. I think maybe I enabled you in my own way, paying for things, solving problems, stepping in when you failed. It was easier than confronting the real issues." Stephanie nodded thoughtfully. "Dr. Chen said something similar, that our whole family had these unspoken roles we all played. You were the responsible one, the fixer. I was the chaos creator. Mom was the enabler. Dad was the avoider. That sounds about right." I agreed with a small smile. We talked for nearly 3 hours, covering years of misunderstandings, resentments, and painful memories. It was not easy. There were tears on both sides, moments of tension, old wounds reopened. But there was also something new. Honesty, real honesty, without the cushion of excuses or the sharp edges of blame. By the time we parted, we had reached a tentative understanding. I would not immediately resume financial support, but I would consider helping with tuition again if Stephanie maintained therapy, kept her job, and continued showing genuine effort to change. We would meet regularly, just the two of us, without Mom's interference, to rebuild our relationship step by step. The road ahead with Mom proved more challenging. When I finally sat down with both parents a week later, Mom initially refused to acknowledge any role in the dysfunctional family patterns. "I always just wanted what was best for both my girls," she insisted. "If I paid special attention to Stephanie, it was because she needed it more." "You were always so independent, Amanda." Dad said quietly but firmly, "That is not entirely true, and you know it. Amanda needed you, too. She just stopped asking because you were always focused on Stephanie." Mom's face crumpled slightly at his words. "I never meant to neglect you," she said to me, her voice wavering. Stephanie was always so loud about her needs. And you seemed fine handling things on your own." "I learned to be," I replied. "Because I had to." It was the first crack in Mom's defensive armor, the first hint that she might eventually be able to see her part in our family's dysfunction. Progress with her would be slower than with Stephanie. I realized her identity was too wrapped up in being the mother who understood her troubled younger daughter. Admitting her enabling had caused harm would require dismantling a core piece of how she saw herself. Over the following months, our family began a careful reconstruction. Nathan and I hosted a small dinner at our condo, inviting my parents and Stephanie. The conversation was sometimes stilted, occasionally tense, but ultimately civil. Nathan's parents joined us for a subsequent dinner, and I watched with quiet satisfaction as James, Nathan's father, engaged Stephanie in a genuine conversation about her job at the bookstore, showing her a basic respect that asked nothing of her except normal adult behavior. By the time our 6-month wedding anniversary arrived in December, the transformation was remarkable. Stephanie had maintained her therapy and her job. She had found a more affordable apartment with 2 roommates and was learning to budget her money responsibly. She had even enrolled in community college classes, paying for them herself through a combination of her bookstore employee discount saving and a small scholarship. Mom had reluctantly attended 2 family therapy sessions, and while still defensive, had begun to listen more than she argued. Dad had found his voice at last, no longer avoiding conflict, but instead mediating it with newfound confidence. On our anniversary evening, Nathan surprised me with dinner at the restaurant where we had our first date. Over dessert, he asked the question that had been on both our minds. "Are you happy with how things have turned out with your family?" I considered this thoughtfully. Happy might be too strong a word. Cautiously optimistic is more accurate. There is still so much work to do, especially with Mom. But yes, I think we are on a better path. "And you have no regrets about taking such a hard line after the wedding?" "None," I said with certainty. "It was painful and scary, but necessary. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions." I wish I had done it years ago. As we walked home through the light snow that had begun to fall, I reflected on the strange journey of the past 6 months. My wedding day had been partially ruined. Yes, the cake smashing and champagne throwing would always be part of our story. But what had emerged from that disaster was something I had never thought possible: a chance at a healthier family dynamic. A sister who was finally growing up. Parents who were, however, slowly changing patterns established decades ago. It would never be perfect. There would be setbacks and arguments, old habits reasserting themselves in moments of stress. But for the first time in my life, I felt hopeful about my family's future. Not because I was fixing everything for everyone, but because I had finally learned to establish boundaries and stick to them. And in that process, I had discovered something important. True love is not about endless giving and endless forgiveness without accountability. Sometimes love means setting firm boundaries. Sometimes it means allowing people to face the consequences of their choices. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to step back and let people find their own way. I squeezed Nathan's hand as we approached our condo building, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. "Thank you," I said simply. "For what?" "For standing by me through all of this. For supporting me." When I finally stood up for myself, he smiled, pulling me close. Always. That is what partners do. And in that moment, surrounded by gently falling snow and held in the arms of someone who truly supported me, I knew that despite everything, I had received the most important wedding gift of all, the courage to create a healthier future. Not just for myself, but for my entire family.